Good morning, good afternoon, Australian expats. My name is Jeremy Harper. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Expat Mortgage Podcast. Today we have a special guest. We have Kristan from Johnson Property Co. Good morning, Kristan.
Hey Jeremy, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
So very exciting. I'm in Sydney. We're going to talk all things Sydney and specifically the inner west. So I guess before we chat through that, because I know there's a lot of expats that are from this area or have got a keen eye. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of about your business and what you do?
Yeah, not an original Inner West local, but now called the Inner West home,
Yep.
originally from the country in Orange. Uh, I wasn't a real estate agent. I didn't take the traditional path to a real estate agency. I worked as a mental health nurse for quite a while. Did the Australian dream, bought my first home. Unfortunately, I didn't have someone like myself there to guide that conversation and bought a bit of a dud. Uh, but it sparked a real passion for property. Fast forward 10 years, I was doing what a buyer's agent does for friends and family, and then decided to make the career jump and become a buyer's agent. And that's where Johnson Property Co. was founded in 2022.
Fantastic. And a little bit about yourself. So full service buyer's agency. Do you want to tell people what that
Yeah.
is, particularly if people are overseas that are not familiar with what a buyer's agent does?
Yeah, so if I think about us as a real estate agent, but for the buyer. So our job is to facilitate the buying process and make sure it's as smooth as possible and make sure that our buyers or our clients get the best possible outcome. Now, that's not always the best possible price, but it's the best possible terms that suit them. Especially if you're emigrating back, you may need delayed settlement, you may need some early access or some tweaks to the way that you get into the property. So our job is to make sure that that happens at the most smooth and the most streamlined way possible.
Fantastic. And so assisting obviously first home buyers, owner occupiers, investors, people looking to upgrade their family home.
Yeah, definitely. Probably a 60-40 split with people looking to buy to live, and then the other 40 is people looking for an investment in the area. And we know that the Inner West is such a desirable area for both to live, and that
Yeah.
makes it such a desirable place to invest as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so I guess we'll just kind of we're keen to dive into some of those areas you're talking about because I think it's a great patch. But just we had a bit of data come through this week, bit of an update. We had the RBA's hiked up on Tuesday, so quite fresh. So cash rate's now at 4.35%. We'll start to see that filter through for homeowners that have a mortgage in the next couple of weeks. So that will come through as a higher repayment, that 25-point increase. What are you seeing, I guess, before we get into some of the data, how are you seeing the market at the moment in the Inner West?
I would say the market right now has been going through a bit of a reset even before the interest rate hike. I think the current economic climate, the upcoming budget, there has been a real pause on the upward trajectory of the market. We're
Hmm.
seeing auction clearance rates nationally at around 50%. Auction clearance rates in the Inner West are sitting over the last 3 weeks sub 40%. So we're seeing properties that 3 months ago would have flown off, really just starting to take a bit more time, and
Yep.
vendors are having to take some realistic price adjustments to just get the property sold.
And I know, the Sydney market's very, very much been traditionally going to auction. What's the feedback with some of the agents in the area? Are we seeing a lot more open or negotiations pre-auction, ability to kind of sell privately and take that market and that sale offline?
Mm. Yeah, good question. So we're still seeing agents launch auction campaigns.
Yep.
Where we're seeing a change is that rather than them pushing them to auction, we're seeing that week before deals, them trying to structure deals or trying to structure purchases. And if they've got one buyer, they're trying to get them to make an offer so that they can wrap it up quickly. And this is where I think we as buyers agents can come in, and we're telling all of our clients right now to actually go to auction. I think there's a real opportunity to be in on the auction floor, make that agent, the real estate agent, work for the deal, make the vendor feel the pressure that there isn't the competition that they would have liked, and there's a
Yep.
real opportunity for them to use that downward pressure to secure a better deal.
Yep. Yeah, interesting. I having that same conversation with clients around this is turning into, obviously it's turning into a buyer's market, but also representing if you're in the market where you are looking to potentially upgrade, if you're comfortable, well, if you get conditioned to say, okay, I may sell my property, it may at a lower price point. So maybe I've got an apartment worth, say, 1.2, which I think is what it should sell for. Perhaps you take a price of, say, 1.1, so you take a bit of a haircut on that end. But that on the flip side, it allows you to get into something that maybe would have been priced at sort of that mid to sort of high twos, and you may be able to get a discount of the similar amount, and maybe you can get that for mid twos or low twos, so you can use that opportunity in this market. And I think you're spot on. You got to understand how to negotiate that, and when you're dealing with the vendors and with the agents.
Yeah, definitely. I think for buyers that are in the market right now that are either coming from out of area or that have already sold, there's a real opportunity to buy
Yeah,
at a discount. We're seeing at the higher end, the premium market, probably a 10% pullback, and in that kind of mid market, maybe at 5 to 7% pullback. So there's a real opportunity to buy at kind of early 2025 rates and be able to secure a really good deal.
yeah, yeah. And so before you're saying you kind of break down the area into the upper market, mid market, and then sort of the lower market. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think the inner west, there's really three main markets that are currently operating. You've got that kind of $3.5 million plus premium market. That I think whenever the market pulls back, the premium market is the first and the one that feels it the most. But that's really shown again in this current pullback. That mid market of kind of 2.5, 2 to 2.5, up to 3.5 is kind of still going okay, but still seeing maybe that mid five pullbacks. And
Yep.
then that up to 1.5 market is still quite buoyant and it's quite strong. And that I think is purely only because of the government incentives. We're seeing buyers, first home buyers especially, that have a 5% deposit, that are getting stamp duty exemptions, that are still fueling competition in that kind of price point.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, that lower point where first time buyers are accessing that, so that 95% lend, they are quite often push themselves to the limit in terms of borrowing capacity, which is driving their purchase price and their budget because they don't have a huge deposit. So as rates go up, those type of borrowers are seeing sort of like a 4% reduction every time on their borrowing capacity. So yeah, just I think for those type of borrowers that perhaps have access to that program, if they know rates are going up, then this is the time they sort of need it to sort of execute on that sale really, because if they wait to the end of the year, rates are higher, they'll get reassessed, lower borrowing capacity, lower budget they can use.
Yeah, definitely. That pre-approval that they've got now may not reach the same value when they get reassessed.
Correct. So a little bit, so we've got here some totality data from April. So quite fresh. And I guess what sticks out to you that we kind of want to talk through?
I think that looking at the house values, you see that Sydney house prices have come back. I reckon the majority of that is probably in that last 6 weeks. I think before
Yep.
that it was still trimming along all right, but now I think uh, global conflict, the upcoming election is really kind of driving that. And I think that I don't know if that changes with the increase in interest rates on
Yep.
Tuesday.
Yes. Okay. Well, and that reflects, I mean, if you look at the quarterly, it's come back 1.4% over the last 3 months. So you're spot on. And then you've got that annual 4.4. So it is still growing on an annual basis, but it is slowing down. So you think that's going to be a similar sort of readout for the June quarter?
I do. I think that there's not enough competition in the market right now. Vendors, I think we're seeing vendors not wanting to sell at a discount, so they're not selling.
Hmm.
Buyers that should be buying, following the media hype and are sitting on their hands when they
Yep.
probably should be taking action.
Yep.
So we've got this kind of chicken and the egg scenario where no one is moving when really this is where the prime opportunity is
Yep.
for buying right now.
Correct. And people will look back on these, and then it happens every time, every cycle, but people will look back and think, you know, potentially if they put in an extra $25,000 that they weren't willing to put down, that would have got them into a significantly different asset. You know,
Hmm.
maybe that's an asset, and you've got to think long term. So if if you're a young couple listening to this, or you've got maybe a small dependent, can you stretch yourself to get that additional bedroom that's actually going to keep you in that same property longer term, which is going to put you in a much better situation than having to try and upgrade, 2 years later and settle now for something a bit cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. And again, everyone's circumstances are different, right? We we want to make sure that our clients are never or are in as little mortgage stress as possible.
Yeah.
So again, that's making sure that they're stretching themselves, but also not leaving themselves in a point where they could be at risk if
Yeah.
there is another rate hike or two.
Definitely. And so perhaps we'll just talk a little bit about some of these beautiful suburbs in the inner west.
Hmm.
I'm thinking about some of the expats that would be listening in. Quite often they've got children, perhaps getting to that age. And I always find this when they're getting closer to that period of maybe starting high school, so a little bit of an older children, they think about, okay, well, maybe I need to look at something for the kids to move back to when they start high school, or want to start high school in Sydney. So, with that in mind, like what do you see in terms of trends around schools in the area, in the inner west? Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, so I think that there's really a big draw to places like Concord because of the good schooling in that area. For expats, the peninsula, so you're looking at Balmain, Roselle, they're always very, very highly desirable.
Yeah.
From in two folds. One, there's some good schools around there already, but two, you've got access to the motorway, which will then get you into the city or into the kind of eastern suburbs, private schools around there. Then if you're looking at kind of that mid market, more towards kind of Stanmore Petersham, you've got Newington, which is a private school there, which
Hmm.
is really quite popular. It's just gone co-ed,
It's gone co-ed.
which is again another big plus for those parents that didn't want a single sex school.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
then if you're looking at the younger kids, places like Summerhill are really quite desirable. Summerhill public schools are really sought after catchment area. So again, quaint village, really great lifestyle, good schooling. It kind of ticks all the boxes there.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Balmain, stunning, stunning suburb. It's always had a bit of a tag of it's sort of a bit of a retirement suburb. Is the access for people, has that improved over the years? So access to the city. So if you're of the working age, you've got a job in the city, your kids got to go to school. Has that improved?
So the there's two parts to that. So the ferry gets you into the city quite quickly. So if you're
Hmm.
down the bottom end, Balmain East, Birchgrove, the ferry into the city is great. We're also going to see at the kind of the Victoria Road end around Roselle, there's the new metro line going in. So it's not going in for another 2032 is kind of the expected live launch date. But
Yep.
once that goes, you've then got another quick route into the city. So it's it has been a difficult. There's only one road or two roads in and out, which can be difficult from a public transport standpoint.
Yep.
But it's now becoming more and more
Accessible.
connected. Yeah, connected
Yeah.
and accessible.
And I'd say to that, even the last sort of 5+ years, probably since COVID, this cycling infrastructure has improved out of sight for the area. So people can basically off-road, there's dedicated infrastructure. You could ride your bike from, Cooks River all the way through there. You can
Hmm.
even link through Balmain, take you all the way through back to the fish market. I mean, all of that looks fantastic and get yourself in the city. So people that want to ride to work, it's great infrastructure. I'd say it's probably some of the best out there in the world.
Yeah,
I
they've
know, I
definitely
know
done a
Melbourne's
lot.
always said it's the cycling city of Australia, but I think I think the inner west has overtaken that now. So for those people that are overseas and they want to commute around on bike, the inner west is the place to be now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that you get in the inner west, across the whole of the inner west, is pretty decent schooling across the board.
Yep,
You get affordability that you don't get in the eastern suburbs or on the North Shore. You so again, Balmain is that blue chip, but there's definitely pockets that are much more affordable for those expats that are looking to move back and be able to still be in really good school catchments, have good connectivity to the city and the CBD from a work perspective, but also be in a good school zone.
yeah, and also there's some suburbs in Sydney they can kind of get painted with a bit of a brush around, oh, that's a bit quiet. But I look at somewhere like a Newtown, there's huge parts of Newtown and even Enmore where you can go up there for a late meal. There's a lot of, music shows on. You can go and get that sort of scratch that itch of going out and enjoying that. And then you can go back to some of these surrounding suburbs where it's a bit quieter and a bit more family friendly. So there's a good balance there, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I might be a little bit biased. I own in Enmore and we live in Newtown, so I love the area. But you have the access to, as you said, bars, restaurants, clubs. You can then probably walk 300 meters and be in what feels quite suburban
Definitely.
for inner city.
Especially when there's no planes come overhead. Definitely quieter.
That is the inner west. The Marrickville pause is a real thing, but
Yep,
you the absence of flight path and flight noise, I would hazard a guess to say that the prices of the region would be much more eastern suburbs prices.
definitely. And on the flip side, it's 15 minutes to get to the airport, which is not many
Agreed.
places like that in the world that gives us that sort of access. So, and
Definitely.
what are your thoughts? Have you heard anything about? I mean, I always think about the Inner West, the biggest sort of not drag, but Parramatta Road. Are they going to sort that out? I know a lot of people are now using that sort of bus, and that's clearing out, and there's traffic obviously going to the city. There's going to be the metro going through some of those parts, and we've had some of the the, the motorways have come through. But yeah, Parramatta Road, like, what do you see there long term going to happen?
So um, the Inner West has got a scheme or a plan at the moment called Our Fairer Future, which is a redevelopment, rezoning. So we're seeing a lot of parts around major train station, metro stations getting rezoned from
Hmm.
R1, which is like low-grade residential, up to R3, which could be mid residential up to 9 stories along that Parramatta Road corridor, especially from sort of the Camperdown through to Leichhardt, that whole corridor has been rezoned and they're looking to build medium density housing along there. So I think that that redevelopment will, in time, rejuvenate. Yes, it will still be a main thoroughfare, but you're going to have a lot more people living in more high dense living. If you look at somewhere like Zetland and somewhere like Waterloo, those areas have quite a quite a nice vibe around them when you're walking through the streets. There's restaurants and cafes and it feels like its own little community. So I think that getting rid of some of the old retail that's sitting dormant and turning that into medium density housing, one, it fits the or fixes the housing problem that we have here in Sydney, and
Yep.
two, it creates a more community vibe.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think there was talks about potentially a tram line, or is that sort of something that's a bit of a pipe dream?
I'm not sure about that one. There's there's whispers of all sorts of things. I think if they can just finish the metro line, I think that's the priority for right
That's the
now.
priority. Okay. Okay. So, to finish off on sort of the suburbs, like if I was to pick your brains, like where are you seeing the trends in terms of those suburbs we've been talking about today in the inner west? Like, is there anything where, if you're sort of in that lower market or the mid market we talked about before, where would you
Mm.
be looking?
If I'm a value buyer looking in that kind of up to two, maybe two and a half, there's a couple of sleepy suburbs that I would recommend. I like Hurlston Park. I like
Hmm.
places like Campsie from a longer term play. There's new metro line going in those areas. which right now, if you commute from somewhere like Hurlston Park, it takes you around 53 minutes to get into the CBD. Once that metro line launches, which should happen later this year, it's going to be 23 minutes. So
Yeah.
what that's going to do is that whole cohort of people that thought it was too far to travel will then start to look and see affordability. They can't buy in Dulwich Hill, so they're looking to the next suburb along, and that Hurlston Park region will just get gentrified more and more and become exactly what Marrickville was 10 years ago, exactly what Dulwich Hill is at the moment, that kind of new happening place to be.
Yeah. Okay. And if on the sort of if you're a first time buyer and maybe your budget's sort of around that mil, maybe sub mil, where are you seeing good buying at the moment?
Yeah, so you're looking at an apartment and you're looking potentially in the Campsie through to Canterbury regions. There's some decent buying. There's also a lot of rubbish in and around that area, so you just have to be careful to get good advice and
Yeah.
do your due diligence to make sure you're buying in a good low density red brick. I think that's where the value is.
Yeah. And sort of doing your homework if you're looking to buy something that's perhaps a new build off the plan, really doing your due diligence on the developers.
Yeah, I would go even further to say don't buy off the plan. But
Yep.
for me, I find that there are a number of developers that are decent names. So there are a couple that I would say I'd feel comfortable with proceeding with or advising or letting clients go and buy it. But
Yep.
for us, the especially when you're looking to buy something that is going to have good future growth, most of these developments now are getting done in sort of medium density. So there's a lot of them. It means that you're not going to get that capital growth for another 10, 15 years. So if you're looking to get into the market with maybe a 5 to 7 year time horizon to then look at buying your next property, you really need something that's going to appreciate and that there's less overall supply of.
Sure. Yeah. No, it makes sense. That's some good points there to leave off on today. So I want to thank you for your time, Kristen. That's great. We'll have some show notes on how people can contact you. We'll give your email address out there. So what would you recommend people just reach out to if they've got any questions or thinking about
Yeah,
the Inner West?
yeah, definitely. You can. We're pretty heavy on socials, so you can get us at Johnson Property Co. You can email me on kristen@johnsonpropertyco.com.au. Otherwise, just yeah, jump on our website. I'm more than happy to jump on a chat. And again, we're not here to. We know that we're not for everyone, but if you're not from the area and you just want to have a chat with someone who is boots on the ground that can actually just help steer the start of the conversation, we're more than happy to chat.
Yeah, definitely. I think 60% of this game is just making sure you avoid making the mistakes and then letting the market and the good decisions take care of itself. But okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you to listeners for tuning in today. Please keep across the socials. We've got the budget that's going to be released next week. So we'll have webinars and we'll have podcasts and reactions and blog posts sort of breaking down what that means for the Australian expats, if there's any changes to the taxes we need to be across. But until then, thank you everyone for your time and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.